Well, fast-moving developments to bring you from Thailand as well, a country still coming to terms with recent political upheaval and military control. The parliament in Bangkok has voted for the candidate of the Pheu Thai party, Srettha Thavisin, to be the next Prime Minister. Mr Srettha won a majority of votes in a joint session of the elected lower house and the unelected Senate. He heads a coalition which includes conservative, military-aligned parties which have previously opposed his party. The vote coincided with the return from a 15-year exile of the former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra. He's the founder and the main funder of the Pheu Thai and coincidentally a former owner of Manchester City Football Club here in the UK. Hours after his return, he was taken to prison for corruption. Mr Thaksin has long argued the charges levelled against him were politically motivated. And it's widely believed a deal has been agreed that will allow him to serve only a short portion of his 8-year sentence. Straight to Bangkok, let's join our Southeast Asia correspondent, Jonathan Head, who is there. Can I ask you about the big picture firstly, Jonathan, because you've got millions of Thais who voted for what they saw as being big structural changes in the country via the Move Forward party. They're now not in power, and there's this new Prime Minister we've got today. He's not exactly a familiar face to people either. I wonder across the country, is there a strong sense of disillusionment about democracy?
I think that's been there for a while, Lucy. I think they understood that this country is operating at the moment inside the straitjacket of a constitution that was written by a military junta after a military coup with the explicit goal of preventing any government or party too reformist, too much of a threat to the status quo, from taking power. And it has worked exactly as planned. The unelected Senate blocked Move Forward, which was in alliance with Pheu Thai. Both were seen as broadly reformist parties. They had a clear majority in the lower house. They were explicitly blocked. Move Forward was blocked by the Senate and other parties from even being a part of a coalition. And so we've ended up with this hodgepodge of different parties, an 11-party coalition, very different backgrounds, former enemies in the case of Pheu Thai and the pro-military ultra-royalist parties. It's not at all clear how well it's going to function. And Srettha Thavisin, he's a successful businessman. His company, Sansiri, one of the top property companies in the country, but not an experienced politician, not especially popular in Pheu Thai. No one's sure how he's going to hold this whole thing together. It's a rather unseemly end after 3 months from an election that actually did raise very, very high hopes of reforms. But I think Move Forward, the party that was pushed aside, accepts that in some ways, you know, that if they're in opposition, they can stay pure, they can focus on building support. And depending on how this government performs, the reformists might do even better at the next election.
So, Jonathan, Mr Srettha is not familiar to many, but a name that so many of our viewers will know is that of Thaksin Shinawatra. He's back. What's the future for him now?
Well, interesting. He's in prison right now. I think he knew that was going to happen. I mean, it's always been clear that to come back, he would have to accept, even though he's challenged them in the past, the prison sentences passed on him for things he did when he was in power. But there has been a lot of negotiating, and you know, he's a rich man who lives in a great deal of comfort. He would not have come back here if he thought he was going to spend long in prison. But in some ways, he's a hostage because, yes, his party's in government, but it's in a coalition. His party's not as big as it used to be in the past. And they are going to have to focus on keeping Mr Thaksin out of prison. The family, the Shinawatra family, fund the party. With that focus, how much could they possibly pursue the reforms that they have promised in the past, for example, to demand a better constitution, to demand limits on the military and being in politics? These are things that used to be dear to the hearts of Pheu Thai supporters, but the party is not going to be able to pursue those in this coalition, and when it's worrying about keeping Mr Thaksin out of jail. So I think in some ways, you know, the military has given up power, and the government it was associated with sort of didn't do well at the last election, but it's continuing its influence. And what it has done with Pheu Thai is over time it's ground down what was a very powerful election machine to being a much smaller one with much more limited ambitions, and it's marginalised Move Forward, the one party that's really excited those who want change. I think Thai politics is still very fluid, it's still in motion, but we are seeing, with Mr Thaksin's return and this new rather unseemly government, I think, the end of Pheu Thai as a really powerful political force in Thailand.
An interesting few months to come still. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us.